So I finally finished this book, The Great Equations by Robert P. Crease. The subtitle is Breakthroughs in Science from Pythagoras to Heisenberg. It has 9 chapters, and each one starts with an equation. Let me find the start of a chapter. This one's good. It has the equation, it has a description of the equation, that's what's in these brackets, and then it has a quote about it, and then it describes the journey of how that equation was discovered. And then after each chapter there's a little thing called an interlude, where the author kind of talks candidly about like the discovery and what it means for different things and how we should think about it. This book started off really slowly for me, and I didn't think I was going to like it at all. But then there's one chapter, I think it's like chapter 4 or something, so it's a few chapters in, that compares the discovery of this equation to a Shakespeare play. And it actually lays out like the cast of characters like you would have at the beginning of like a playbook. And then it has like Act 1, Scene 1, and all that stuff, and it kind of lays it out like a play type story. And it started to get really cool after that. And so the writing kind of goes back and forth from being like a really interesting way to write about these equations to a really boring way to write about it. So it goes back and forth, and sometimes I just had to take a break because it was in the boring section, and sometimes I couldn't put it down because it was an interesting section. So it was kind of hit or miss throughout the book, but one thing I did really like is it compared a lot mathematics and science to stories. And it talked about this word, which is my new favorite word, but it's really hard to say, so I had to write it on a sticky note. Can't even see the writing. But it's anosognosia. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it's like the removal of science and math from history. If you think about it, in history class, you don't really learn about so much the mathematical, scientific discoveries. And the reason that they put forth in this book is kind of because we want drama when we're learning about history. We want to learn about the wars, we want to learn about conflict, we want to learn about revolutions and things. So you learn about like the Renaissance and, you know, the scientific revolution and these specific times when it got really dramatic in science, but most of the time science is removed because it's seen as not being dramatic. But this book really proves that it is dramatic. And the other thing is that history isn't always dramatic. Like, life isn't always dramatic, and I would argue that it's just as important to know about the non-dramatic parts of history as it is to know about the dramatic parts, and so we shouldn't be discriminatory in our history classes and what we're learning about. And so this book argued a lot for the reblending of humanities and science into one history, which I really enjoyed. So it gets pretty technical at times, and if you don't have a good science background, you might have to really focus on the sections, but I do think it does a good job of explaining things in everyday language, so you should be okay. But some parts of it are hard to get through, some parts aren't hard to get through. It's kind of hit or miss, but I would recommend it if you're interested.